Welcome to DISCflex certification.
So the whole DISC model is basically about the quadrants that are on two axes. The first axis is task orientation versus people orientation. Important, right? The two ends of the spectrum. Tasks orientation versus people orientation. The next axis is introverted behaviors versus extroverted behaviors. So those are the two axes that segment the quadrants. And the first quadrant that we talked about is the D. And now we're going into the actual fundamentals of DISC. The first one is dominance. That's your need for control. It's your source of ambition. Whenever you are using your high D, that is your motivation factor. You're upping that D, you're flexing that D, you're using uh, DISC. Now, the negative behaviors around that are aggression, impatience, thoughtlessness, and you would be a permission taker rather than a permission asker. On this good side of those behaviors, it would be drive, motivation, getting people to kind of do things and launch. And the next thing we talk about is influence. This is your need for communication, your source of persuasion. Again, it's your extroverted factor where you're feeling talkative. Any of these situations where you feel like that, you're using your I factor. Some of the negative behaviors around the I factor are that you could feel insecure, that you could feel needy. Those are not good behaviors. So for each of the quadrant behaviors, there is a yin and a yang. There is a positive and a negative behavior and everything else in the middle. And we'll talk about that when we get to a little bit later on in the course. The S is steadiness, and this is your need to do strategy, strategic planning, your thoughtfulness, your caring, your loyalty. If you're going and helping people out, that is a caring behavior, and that is your S behavior. If you're using that kindness, that caring, that loyalty, and patience. So those are all positive behaviors on the S side. On the negative side, you can be stubborn. You can dig your heels in. That's not really great. So let's move on to the compliance behaviors. On the compliance behaviors, when you're looking at compliance, you're really looking for your need of structure, your need for planning. It's your source of organization. If you're completely focused on doing a task and you're going down your prioritization list, that means that you're using C-type behaviors. Checking off your to-do list is a C-type behavior. Those are all positive attributes. On the negative side on a C behavior, you could, if you've got a high C, you could be kind of a little bit rigid, where you say no to people. When you say, no, that's not in my purview, I'm not going to do that. That's the way we always do things. I'm not changing my ways. You stick with the status quo. So that's the basics of DISC. Now, we have a cheat sheet for you, and we make it part of this course. So you'll notice over here that we have a super, super wonderful cheat sheet for you that teaches you the focus, the strengths, the motivators, the weaknesses, and the stressors for all of these types of behaviors. And I highly recommend that you study that and become extremely familiar with it as you go through this certification process. As we go through certification, we want you to understand how you can use DISC reports, DISCflex reports. One of the most important things is knowing yourself. Self-awareness is critically important. This provides a window of self-awareness within minutes, literally minutes, for moderating your behavior for every situation of your professional and personal life. It also provides a way to look at habits that you have for long-term change. If you have any bad habits, you might want to adjust those if it doesn't meet your long-term goals and objectives in life, whether that's personal or professional. Like I said before, I had to adjust my high D so that I wouldn't get frustrated as much. So I could let things go, and then I wouldn't be quick to anger and just run out of the gate before other people even understood what I was trying to do. That those are not good behaviors in a leader. Those are not good behaviors for somebody like me who wanted to get ahead in life. I had to do some long-term behavioral morphing. The other thing that you can do is this report will help you communicate and lead and motivate others if that's your goal. It provides a window for reading people according to your behavioral set. So it's others' awareness that can help you build up your influencing and leadership toolkit, your management toolkit. Um, I think it's most important for getting ahead in life. If you are situationally adept at changing your behavior, you're going to be invited more places. You're going to have more opportunities. You're going to have more career prospects. So for advancement and career prospects, behavioral, situational awareness, and morphing is really where it's at. I think it's super, super important to have that skill set. So let's get back to the summary and scores page. This is the page that everybody goes to first, and it is, in my opinion, the most exciting and rewarding page in the report, bar none. This is where you're going to spend a lot of time yourself studying, but also when you're coaching and mentoring people through the report, you're going to spend a lot of time here explaining in personal terms about what these charts and graphs and words actually mean. So the first thing that we do is, it is a summary. So the first thing you'll notice up at the top, right over here, is my DISC pattern. My DISC pattern is a 2 or 3 sentence synopsis of what the person's overarching behaviors are. It's that simple. The next thing is the bar graph. That tells you the exact levels on a scale of 0 to 100, segmented. How high or low a level does this person have in dominance, influence, steadiness and strategy, and compliance? That's it. So that will set off the next thing, which is the pattern, that actual graph, that pattern. And in this one, it happens to be a high D. You can see from the graph that we put it into a pattern. This is a high D person. The cool thing is, DISC is super easy to understand, super simple to remember, and there are only 15 patterns. That's it. So when you see those patterns, very, very easy to remember and super easy to read people because you don't have a lot to remember here. This particular pattern for this particular report is a high D personality. And then we say, okay, now that we know you're a high D, what does that mean? Well, it means that this is what you will tend to do. That's what the next set of verbiage is. What does that mean? And finally, the most exciting thing, we are the only people on the planet that use a pie chart and DISC. Why wouldn't you? That's the question. Why wouldn't you use a pie chart? Now, let me explain why it just makes so much sense to do this. If you're looking at the individual behaviors in a column, which is what all the other reports do on the planet, you're not looking at the composite of the person in terms of behavioral flexing. So what happens is, if we have taken those bar graphs and turned them into a pie chart of the overall behaviors of the person as they relate to who they are as a composite human being, you'll see that we've got the red for dominance, the blue for influence, the yellow for compliance, and the green for strategy, segmented into what kind of looks like pie pieces. The most important thing to understand is that when you're flexing situationally, maybe I want to put my D down because this is a high D person. I want to put my D down a little bit less dominant. I'm going to take that piece of the pie, which is sitting on this chart at about 38%, and I'm going to compress it down to maybe 30%. Well, when I do that, other behaviors have to fill up the circle. You don't get a white piece in the in the circle, there's only red, blue, green, and yellow. It has to fill up. And what's crazy great about DISCflex is you can choose which behaviors fill up the rest of the circle when you compress or expand that pie chart. Because I could choose to be more dominant or more influencing or more steadiness with my behaviors and strategy or more compliant. And I can push my D back to 30% and fill it in with the yellow, the green, or the blue. I get to choose. Now, what people don't understand is most often people don't choose. It just happens by happenstance, which is not really behaviorally good for the situation. They just do whatever comes naturally. And that is often not the correct behaviors for the situation that are optimal. So choosing how to take that pie chart and flex those pieces is just the most wonderful skill that you can possibly imagine that you can give yourself and teach other people to give themselves. That behavioral flexing, and you can see it happening. So the next thing on this chart, on this chart, is understanding that we have a mechanism called third party inputs where we can see if what you've been teaching the client, the coachee, the mentee is actually happening. We have a third party component we'll talk about in just a minute. The next thing that you want to look at in this chart is the strengths and potential challenges that the person has because of their behavior. And what's interesting about this is that if you focus in on the strengths and the potential challenges, you will notice that they are very specific to the individual. These change for every report, as does every word. So super interesting to take them through this summary and scores page, and then we move on to the next page, which starts to do a deeper and deeper and deeper dive into their personalities. So very important that you understand this page is where they're going to go first.